We're the travel agents coming to you with tips, tricks, interviews, and voyages by cruise. The travel agents bringing you the latest travel news.
Today we are joined with Dawn Barclay. She has just written a book. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Yes.
How about you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Great. My name is Dawn Barclay, and I've written a book called Traveling Different, Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse. Came out today, which is the 15th of August, and it is available in hardcover ebook and audiobook.
That's awesome. Where can they purchase the book?
You can pretty much get it anywhere. You can get it, of course, on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or at Rowman & Littlefield, who are the publishers. They have it on their website. It's available in most small bookshops, like independent bookshops. You can go to their website and you'll find it online. You probably won't find it on their shelves, but you'll find it online and can order it through them there. And the same thing, the audiobook is available through recorded books and also on Audible.
So Dawn, I know I have friends and family who have children on the spectrum, and whenever it comes to travel, they immediately get nervous and anxious and almost look at it like, no, I just can't travel. I just can't. And so You're coming to us with this idea that, no, actually you can. There's some really great things to mitigate the stress and the issues. What would you say are like some of those top things that, you would start by just telling a parent, yes, you can actually make this happen?
Well, what's interesting about what you said is it's backed up by a survey that IBCCES held in 2018 and updated in 2022. In the results of 2018, of 1,000 special needs parents, 87% of them said they would not travel at all. And of those, 93% said they would if they knew where to go and what to do, and they knew that the people working there had been trained to help them. Wow. Now, that's been updated in 2022. I actually have a story coming out in on my blog and also hopefully in Insider Travel Report where I write, where it will say that that's gone down about 9%, which means that all this accreditation and all this training from these different training companies is making a difference and making it more feasible for people to travel. I mean, 78% is still a huge number of people who don't feel like they can travel. And most of those people don't do so because they're actually afraid of what people will think about them if their child goes into sensory meltdown. They're afraid that people will judge them as bad parents or their child as brats, when all it is a sensory overload. So your question, I skirted around it, was what are some ways that people can travel? And that's what the entire book is about. It's got 85% strategies and about 15% or 20% destinations that have been designated as autism friendly or certified autism centers, depending on who's doing the accreditation. And in the book, I talk about how to start small and introduce the concept of travel. And I'm happy to go into that. And I talk about how to prepare. And the tip is that you can never over prepare. And also I talk about how to create a child-centric vacation. And what's really important to also understand is that all these tips will help neurotypical children as well. Because every child, when they're taken out of their comfort zone, and nothing will do that faster than travel, becomes anxious and inflexible. Right. And so the whole key is to create predictability, because children crave predictability and routine. You want to make the unfamiliar familiar to them. So if you're going to start with introducing the concept of travel to a child, you can show them picture books with their favorite characters in children's in travel situations, and librarians would be happy to point out what books those are to you. You can preview via, thank goodness for technology, you can preview everything on YouTube or in videos provided by suppliers. So you should really show a child every aspect of a trip, even this is the outside of the hotel. This is what check-in's going to look like. This is what our room's going to look like. This is what the pool looks like.
That's so interesting you bring that up. I remember I had a friend who was a teacher at a nearby middle school of children on the spectrum. And what they did was they were going to Disney World, and what they practiced in the classroom, they practiced everyone lining up like they were going to go through TSA. They made a little TSA, like a little.
It's like a mock trial.
Exactly.
For TSA,
right. Everyone practiced it. You're going to take off your shoes, and that's normal. And this is how we're going to do it, and put it up on the conveyor belt. And I guess that was significantly helpful.
Perfect. And I was going to say role play is another excellent way to do things. And the beautiful thing is that there is a group. The ARC has a program called Wings for Autism, and they closed down during COVID. They're coming back. And what they do is provide you in several airports around the country with a dress rehearsal from arrival to boarding. And when they board, it's into a fake plane, but it'll go through TSA and explain what that's going to be like when there's not so much importance on it because this is a trial run. So that's another thing. Also, there's a group called TSA Cares who can assign someone to you in various airports where you can have somebody just sort of shadowing you and helping you through the more difficult parts like security.
Wow. So there's a lot to learn here and a lot to talk about in this topic. One of the things that I think it would be really helpful for viewers or listeners to know, is there a certain thing when it comes to traveling with kids on the spectrum that might trigger them, or something to help someone on the spectrum travel comfortably?
Well, there's so much. And this is why you've got to think out the trip from the second you leave the house to when you come back, and even afterward, what can trigger you. And you know your child better than anybody else. But what triggers a sensory meltdown can be, 91% of kids with autism, or around that, have sensory sensitivities. So that's hard to say together. So bright lights, flashing lights, fluorescent lights with the hum that goes with them is annoying. Any sort of bright decor or busy decor, or it could be a crowd and the noise of a crowd, or the scent of perfume. It's going to depend on the child. Heavy cleaning agents with that kind of smell, loud noises, sirens. So you can imagine there's just so much, and that's why it's really important to always bring noise canceling headphones with you, dark glasses, especially,
Nice.
You wouldn't think if I bring it to a theme park, even if you're going at night, because of those flashing lights can be disturbing. But again, people are going to know their own children. So you're going to know, wow, how are we going to get from the house to the airport? Are we going to take like a jitney, or are we going to drive ourselves?
Right.
If your child can't deal with a lot of different smells and a lot of crowds, maybe you want to take, you're the only ones in that transfer. Same thing from transferring from from the airport to the hotel. Do you want to take a large bus that might be provided by the hotel, or do you want to rent a car? Because the car might be the better choice. Gotcha. And again, so you really have to break it down. So a couple of the things, because I believe in mini experiences, and one of these are like trial runs. And one of the things you can do, you talked about role play. One of the things you can do is actually go to the airport. The ARC runs a program called Wings for Autism, and that lets the child do a dress rehearsal from everything from arrival at the airport through boarding, although they won't go on a real aircraft. And so that's very helpful because it's not charged, supercharged with like this is the end, this has to happen right now. It just lets them in a relaxed way experience what it's going to be like in advance. And there's also a program called TSA Cares at various airports where you can, if you identify yourself as someone with an issue, that you can have someone assigned to you that can get you through the more difficult parts of the airport process, like like going through security.
That's cool. Quick little plug. I'm proud to say that our Akron Canton Airport here in Northeast Ohio, I believe it's currently one of 2 airports in Ohio that has a sensory room for children with on the spectrum. And I've gotten to tour this room. I thought I was impressed, and it was just like what you're talking about. Because I was thinking, Dawn, when it comes to travel, one thing that, plagues so many people is just, particularly families, having to wait. Just lots of waiting. My brother and his wife and their 2 kids just got home from Scotland last week. Their flight, after a 8-hour flight into Washington, D.C., from Edinburgh. They landed in D.C., and because of the storm, there were no gates open because no flights were leaving, and they had to just sit on the runway for 2 additional hours after an 8-hour flight. And when you have 2 kids who are under 6 years old, that's quite difficult. I can only imagine how difficult it would be if you also had children on the spectrum. And so I was just curious, like, I was just thinking of all the different aspects, Dawn, of having to wait while traveling. Like, you go to get the rental car, there's a line of people. You go to, get on the flight, there's a line of people. With all these lines and waiting, what are some of the tips you have in those situations?
So again, this is why it's really important to think things out in advance and say, these are the places where that can happen. And to explain everything in advance many times to the child, create a social story. And I talk about, it's a sort of a complicated thing to explain here, but I talk about social stories in the book. And it's a narrative from the child's point of view of how they'll deal with certain things. So say, first of all, you're going to go with a go-to bag. And in the go-to bag, you're going to put many things that you might need at different junctures during the trip. So you're going to have your noise canceling headphones. You're going to have snacks. You're going to have electronics with your child's favorite movies and TV shows. You're going to have fidget toys. You're going to have whatever calms your child down. And you can have little gifts that are surprises, like silly putty or anything that's not going to crumble or break apart or make noise that would annoy other passengers. And the beauty of that is you can say, we're going to have these little surprises. And if there's a delay, you're going to get one, or you're going to get one every hour during the delay, so that you actually have incentivized the child to help. I believe in
that's
bribery.
Genius.
I believe in bribery all the way along. I mean, I've been yelled at by therapists for that, but I believe in it strongly. Yeah. And if you've gone over things and the child knows what to expect, you've empowered that child. And that's why it's so important also when you're planning the trip to get the child's buy-in. And maybe you do your research, pick 2 or 3 different locations that you vetted, and then you offer the child the choice, if the child is of an ability to do so. Where do you want to go of these 3 places? Because suddenly the child has, vested interest in the success of the trip. Same thing with daily activities. Let the child have buy-in. Let the child decide what he or she is going to bring along. I mean, obviously you're going to want it to be clothing that is appropriate for the destination. But that brings up another topic, and that is, if you've got a child in Florida who's going to Alaska, you probably want to have that child practice wearing layered clothing and heavier clothing before the actual trip. And you probably don't want to bring new clothing because it's going to be itchy or unfamiliar feeling. Yeah. Some people tell you not to wash your clothes before you go. And I know people are going, what do you mean? I'm not going to go with dirty clothes. But the thing is that the child has the sensation that they know from the clothes they've worn, and also the scent of home. And that is calming to the child. Sure.
Okay, so I know in your book you talk about various destinations that are more friendly for this. Are you willing to share maybe one?
I'm willing to share as many as you want. But I would give the caveat that just because I list the places autism certified or autism friendly, those things mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And you should really do your due diligence. And I list phone numbers and URLs and everything else for every property. Call and find out, how did they get their designation? What was their training? What do they offer? Because what they offer might not be right for your child. Every child on the spectrum is different. And also make sure all the information is still accurate, because things change. I even found destinations that, locations that change. People move museums and things, which is why I have the blog that backs up the book, so that I can update things as I go along. Sure. But you want to make sure also that if they offer a low sensory day or week or whatever it is, that it's when you're going to be there. Because there are some museums that have a low sensory day, but it's one day a month, and it might not be when you're there. Wow. That being said, some of the places that most of the certified autism travel professionals recommended, and many parents agreed, beaches, both Turks and Caicos in Jamaica, are advanced certified autism centers. They go above and beyond. So wonderful place where the kids clubs, the people have been trained.
Yeah, and
There
Dawn, you're
are
talking about,
sensory maps.
sorry to interrupt, you're talking about Beaches Resorts, which is the family-friendly partner of Sandals Resorts, which people might know from commercials and being couples, adults only. Beaches is the family-friendly version. They do have a property in Turks and Caicos, as well as one in Ocho Rios and one in Negril, Jamaica.
Absolutely. Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself. And, so that's an excellent choice. Also cruises. And there is a group called Autism on the Seas that puts together group cruises for families on the spectrum. Oh. And if you're going on your own, they can also organize various amenities and helpful tips along the way. But all the major cruise lines have been trained to offer, they have their staff trained and they have things for you.
Right. And
RCCL, or Royal Caribbean, was the first of those. They even have a TV channel that's dedicated to teaching about what it's like to be on the spectrum. So there's a lot there. And I'm very pro cruise anyway, because I believe for a family where perhaps one person is neurodiverse and one person is neurotypical, there's something for everyone.
Yes.
Now, I will say that the different people that were interviewed in the book sort of had various points of view on whether you should go for a large cruise or a small cruise. So the smaller cruise, they said there's less people around, it's easier to control your environment. But the people who were for the large cruises said, but it's so spread out that you're never going to have a large crowd in any one place, and there's enough diversity to keep everybody happy. So you have to sort of make your decision.
That's really cool. Dawn, could I back you up a little bit? And could you explain, you said the terms neurodiverse and neurotypical. Could you explain that for our audience?
Yeah. Neurotypical probably would be, it's very hard to say it in a PC way, but let's just say neurodiverse means thinking differently.
Okay.
So it might be autism, it might be ADHD, it might be Tourette's, it might be bipolar. Anything where you're programmed a little differently or you're wired a little differently. Neurotypical is the opposite.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
If you mentioned the term sensory overload, and the kids might succumb to that, and the parents start feeling bad because it's happening in public, and they feel like bad parents and all this stuff, which is not true. It's not the case. But what are words of encouragement? What are things that they could do to help calm the child, to help them overcome that sensory deprivation? Sensory overload? Would it be giving them noise canceling headphones in that moment? Or
yes.
Okay.
Well, I think getting them ready, everything I've written in the book is sort of to prepare them so that they don't have the overload. But this is a very hard question to answer because everybody knows their own child and every child is different.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is many people have taught their child calming mechanisms. Some people will just have to let the tantrum, or not the tantrum, but the overload. It's a tantrum. I mean, but it's it comes from an understandable place, play itself out. But they sort of remove the child, get them to a quieter spot, maybe give them food or a snack, or just hold them. Compression helps. It really depends on the child.
Okay.
So when it comes to this topic at hand, have you heard of any or seen any success stories?
Well, all the people, like I don't know if I said this on the program or I said it before we started, but I've interviewed over 100 people for this book, and many of them are the certified autism travel professionals. That many of them are special needs parents themselves, as well as their clients who are special needs parents. So all of their successes are in the book. But the wonderful thing about the way the interviews went is that they weren't afraid to say what went wrong and what they learned from them.
It's good.
So you have one dad who said, and you're benefiting from what they learned because they're telling you what not to do. So you're the lucky ones if you buy the book. One guy was like, I found out that Disney doesn't serve ice cream till 10 a.m. And my child wanted it at 9 and lost his mind. And what they ended up doing was calling home to their travel agent, who told them where in the park at Disney to go where it's quieter. And that helped until ice cream could be had. But now he knows. And I think what I tried to do is give several different tips for each type of situation. So if one doesn't work, another one might, because again, every child is different. And you're going to learn, like, don't give up if one trip doesn't work, because what you've learned is invaluable because you'll take it on the next trip.
Right.
But what I suggest is, before you go and spend thousands on an expensive hotel stay, spend a night at a friend or a relative's house, or even a local hotel, and see where the triggers are going to lie, because then you're going to know how to prepare better. Is it that you need to bring the sheets and blankets from home with the familiar scent, or the toiletries from home, or a fan to block out the noise from the hallway, or a night light, or things that just will help make the room look like it does at home. And that's a much cheaper way to do that. Just like camping, set out a tent in your backyard for a night before you go on a full-fledged camping trip. Anything you can do. I mean, if my child, I didn't know if they were going to like being on the water, before I booked a cruise, I'd probably take a ferry ride.
Oh, good point.
You know, or I take a commuter train before I booked, something cross country.
Dawn, you are absolutely opening up our minds to this new world that I don't think Will, you or I have ever even thought of. Yeah, these are the tips we need. This is good. I'm already thinking of potential clients who might want to travel, and what a good book this would be. What a great resource before their trip takes off. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if I was a travel agent, I would at least have a copy in my office, because you'll know how to advise, even if you don't go out and get the training, which is not that expensive to get, to be a certified autism travel professional. If you just, and IBCCES gives that training. I think it's $150. You can do it online.
Okay.
I don't work for them, by the way, but I just think it's an awfully nice designation to have.
Yeah, of course.
If you don't want to do that, at least this will give you, a snapshot about what the world is like for them, and what you should be thinking about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you plug the book for us one last time?
Oh, I'm done. Yes. Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse. Please follow me at travelingdifferent.com, because that's where I update the book and do various stories that will either supplement or update the book. And you can follow me on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. You pretty much can't spit without seeing or hitting me.
Oh, this was a pleasure having you. This was great.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
I feel great about this, and more knowledgeable on the subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
you definitely have helped us understand a world that we're not familiar with. So thank you for that. And I'll put all of your information in the description of this podcast episode. So anyone that's listening and you want to learn more about Dawn's book and what Dawn is trying to educate people with, you can just click the links, and it's going to send you right to her website, right to her book.
Dawn, all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're the travel